We are now on the fundamentals of assurance services. Let me first discuss the nature of assurance engagement. So literally, when we say assurance, this means the level of confidence na meron ng isang tao sa isang bagay. Halimbawa, sa pagpapautang, most especially in the lending institutions, bago pautangin ng lender ang mangungutang, ay titingnan muna nito ang profile nito to assess the capacity nito to pay back the loan. Kung minsan pa, hinahanapan nito ng collateral like house and lot para magkaroon lang sila ng assurance about the collectibility ng loan. Actually, the same concept applies with assurance engagement. The purpose of the assurance engagement is to lend some degree of confidence in whatever form or whatever degree. In the context of the Philippine framework for assurance engagement, assurance refers to the auditor satisfaction as to the reliability of an assertion being made by one party for use by another party. So to provide assurance, the auditor assesses the evidence collected as a result of procedures conducted and expresses conclusion. The degree of satisfaction achieved and therefore the level of assurance which may be provided is determined by the procedures performed and their results. So in this definition, let me highlight the keywords. So the auditor expresses opinion or conclusion as to the reliability of an assertion made by one party. So when we say assertions, in audit, assertions refers to the implicit or explicit claims and representations made by the management responsible for the preparation of financial statements regarding the appropriateness of the various elements of the financial statements and disclosure. Let's say, for example, if a statement of financial position of an entity shows a building with a carrying amount of 1 million, the auditor shall perform procedures to ascertain the reliability of the management assertion. So in the procedures performed, the auditor satisfies himself that the buildings recognized in the statement of financial position exist at the end of the period, the entity owns or controls those buildings, the buildings are valued accurately in accordance with the measurement basis, and all the buildings owned and controlled by the entity are included within the carrying amount of 1 million. So once it was concluded that the presented carrying amount of the building was reliable, the auditor shall now express an opinion. So this opinion will serve as the credibility lent to the financial statement, which will be used by the end users. So basically, ganun yung objective ng assurance engagements. Practitioners perform procedures to enhance the credibility of the information by evaluating the subject matter if it conforms in all material respects with suitable criteria, which will ultimately improve the likelihood na yung presented information will meet the needs of the intended users. So we have the following types of assurance engagements under the Philippine framework for assurance engagements: reasonable assurance engagement, limited assurance engagement, and other assurance services. So let us differentiate all these assurance engagement. So when we say reasonable assurance engagement, so these are engagement performed to reduce assurance engagement risk to an acceptably low level in order to be able to express a positive opinion form of conclusion. So in the latter chapter natin, or in the later chapter natin, you will all be introduced to the risk-based approach in assurance engagement. So basically, ang assurance procedures natin is tailored to the risk identified. Again, ang approach natin in the assurance engagement is a risk-based approach. So the end goal of the audit or the engagement is to reduce the risk at an acceptably low level. So examples are engagement involving independent financial statement audit and review of prospective financial statements. So in forming a positive conclusion, wordings used, for example, is, in our opinion, the accompanying financial statement present fairly in all material respects. On the other hand, limited assurance engagement is an engagement performed to reduce assurance engagement risk to a level that is acceptable for a specific engagement in order to be able to express a negative form of conclusion. Kanina, in a reasonable assurance engagement, the practitioner uses extensive evidence to support his conclusion. In a limited assurance engagement, however, the practitioner uses only significant amount of evidence as basis for his conclusion. Consequently, the wordings used in a positive form of conclusion show more responsibility on the part of the practitioner than in the negative form. For instance, in the limited form or limited assurance engagement, the practitioner states that nothing has come to our attention that causes us to believe that the accompanying financial statements are not presented fairly. So this shows that in an engagement providing a negative form of assurance, the practitioner's responsibility is limited only to the amount of evidence examined. So because of this, his conclusion is based on the fact that nothing has come to his attention rather than giving a clear opinion on the fair presentation of the financial statements. Lastly, practitioners perform other assurance services which include CPA Web Trust, Elder Care Plus, Business Performance Measurement Services, and Information Reliability Services. So continuing, let us differentiate the assertion-based engagement versus the direct reporting engagement. The content of the practitioner's conclusion in an assurance engagement may depend on whether the engagement is an assertion-based engagement or a direct reporting engagement. So when we say assertion-based engagement, so these are engagements where the evaluation or measurement of the subject matter is performed by the responsible party, which is the management of the entity. And the subject matter information is in the form of an assertion by the responsible party that is made available to intended users. Direct reporting engagement, on the other hand, are engagements where the practitioner either directly performs the evaluation or measurement of the subject matter or obtains representation from the responsible party that has performed the evaluation or measurement that is not available to the intended users. So the subject matter information is provided to the intended users in the assurance report. So the main difference between the two is to who performs the evaluation or measurement of the subject matter. To proceed, since we are talking about assurance engagement, so let us identify ano-ano ba yung mga elements nito. In an assurance engagement, it should exhibit the following elements. First, meron tayo ng tinatawag na three-party relationship, which involves a practitioner, a responsible party, and an intended users. Second, there must be an appropriate subject matter. And meron tayong suitable criteria to be used for the evaluation or measurement. And in the conduct of our engagement, sufficient appropriate evidence must be obtained. And the result of the evaluation or the result of the procedures must be enclosed in a written assurance report in the form appropriate to a reasonable assurance engagement or a limited assurance engagement. So isa-isahin natin lahat ng elements na ito. Starting with the three-party relationship. So the practitioner or the professional accountant provides assurance to the intended users about a subject matter. That is a responsibility of another party, which is usually the management of the entity. So the relationship between the responsible party and the intended users needs to be viewed within the context of a specific engagement. For example, a responsible party and an unintended user need not be from different organizations. So such qualifications depend upon the specific engagement agreed upon. So for instance, a governing body may seek assurance about information provided by a component of the organization. Second, as subject matter, the subject matter and subject matter information of an assurance engagement may take any form, such as the following. So the subject matter may be a financial performance or conditions, for example, historical or prospective financial statement. So the information na titingnan natin is the recognition, measurement, presentation, and disclosure presented in the financial statement. Kapag non-financial performance or conditions naman, like for example, performance of an entity, so yung titingnan nating information is the key indicators of efficiency and effectiveness. Kapag physical characteristics naman, for example, capacity by facility, titingnan natin yung specification document. Pag systems and processes, like for example, entities internal control or IT system, titingnan natin yung assertion about effectiveness. Lastly, pag yung subject matter is behavior, like for example, corporate governance, compliance with regulation, human resource practices, so titingnan natin doon is yung statement of compliance or statement of effectiveness. Next element is the suitable criteria. So criteria are standards or benchmarks used to evaluate or measure the subject matter of an assurance engagement. So criteria inform the intended user of the basis against which the subject matter has been evaluated or measured in forming a conclusion. So the characteristics for determining whether criteria are suitable are as follows. First, relevance. Relevant criteria contribute to conclusions that assist decision-making by intended users. Second is completeness. Complete criteria exist when relevant factors that could affect the conclusions are not omitted. Reliability. Reliable criteria result in reasonably consistent evaluation or measurement, including where relevant, presentation of the subject matter, and disclosures when used in similar circumstances by similar qualified practitioners. Neutrality. Neutral criteria contribute to conclusions that are free from bias. Criteria are not neutral if they cause the practitioner's conclusion to mislead report users. And lastly, understandability. Understandable criteria contribute to conclusions that are comprehensive and are not subject to significantly different interpretation. So these are the characteristics and contributions of suitable criteria for evaluation or measurement of the subject matter. Let's continue to the element of sufficient appropriate evidence. The engagement process for an assurance engagement is a systematic methodology requiring a special knowledge and skill-based and techniques for evidence gathering and evaluation and measurement to support conclusion irrespective of the nature of the engagement subject matter. So the practitioners should obtain sufficient appropriate evidence on which to base the conclusion. So the reliability of evidence is influenced by its source and its nature. So while recognizing that exceptions may exist, the following generalizations about the reliability of evidence may be useful. First, evidence is more reliable when it is obtained from independent sources outside of the entity. Second, evidence is generated internally, or evidence that is generated internally is more reliable when the related controls are effective. Third, evidence obtained directly by the practitioner is more reliable than evidence obtained indirectly or by inference. Fourth, evidence is more reliable when it exists in the documentary form, whether paper, electronic, or other media. And lastly, evidence provided by original documents is more reliable than evidence provided by photocopies or facsimiles. So take note of these generalizations as this would matter in considering which type of evidence would be more appropriate in the engagement. So the practitioner should document matters that are important in providing evidence to support the conclusion expressed in the practitioner's report, and in providing evidence that the assurance engagement was performed in accordance with applicable standards. So such matters are usually documented in the working papers. So finally, we have the written assurance report. So the practitioner should provide a written report containing a conclusion that conveys the assurance obtained about the subject matter. So the practitioner's report should include the title, an addressee, a description of the engagement and identification of the subject matter, a statement to identify the responsible party and describe the practitioner's responsibilities, identification of the parties to whom the report is restricted, and the purpose of the preparation when the report is for restricted purpose, identification of the standards under which the engagement was conducted, identification of criteria, the practitioner's conclusion, the report date, the name of the firm of the practitioner, and the place of issue of the report.